Welcome to the DesignRush Roundtable. I'm your host, Bianca Mayer. Today we're diving into an event that currently has the SEO world abuzz, the Google SEO Leak. This leak has revealed crucial secrets about Google's search algorithm, shaking the industry. We're joined by Mike King, who was pivotal in uncovering and analyzing the leak.
All right, boom. So I broke into the Google offices. No, I'm just kidding. What then happened was this guy named Irfan Azimi, he reached out to Rand Fishkin because he had separately become aware of the leak and sent it to Rand. And then Rand reached out to me. He was like, Mike, this is crazy. I'm not technical enough to figure this out. You know, look at this with me. And I look at it and I'm like, this is amazing. This is a lot of the things that we've always wanted to know.
Our next guest, AJ Khon, captures the essence of the SEO community's long-standing challenges with Google's secrecy.
You know, we were playing a game of poker with Google, right? Essentially, as SEOs. And so, you know, when there are three suited cards when you hit the turn, and I stare down Google and say, do you have a flush? I do not expect them to tell me the truth, right? Like, they're not going to tell me what's in their hand, because they're trying to win. They're trying to, you know, maintain their pot.
Understanding this leak is crucial, especially since 46% of clicks in Google Search Console goes to hidden terms. Also joining the discussion is Daniel Foley Carter, and he emphasizes the varied impacts on the SEO community.
I think there's too many varying factors that go together. So, for example, you've got the lower level SEO community that have followed bad advice for many years. You know, for them, they probably would look at it and not truly understand what they're looking at.
Finally, DesignRush's own SEO Director, Robin Fishley, weighs in with one of the most contentious revelations: click manipulation.
I mean, there's plenty of evidence that click manipulation is still happening, and it's happening at a robot level and a human level. So people are buying clicks, and then they're paying people to click their results, and they're expecting their results to get better.
Stay tuned for all this and more on the DesignRush Roundtable. And don't forget to like and subscribe to keep up with all of our future editions. Okay, everybody, thank you so much again for joining us on our very first DesignRush Roundtable. It is amazing to have you all here with us, especially at such late notice. Thank you for making the time.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome.
Not to worry. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks, Frank.
Of course.
Good to be here.
Alrighty. So guys, I just want to get started by, you know, having everybody introduce themselves quickly. So Robin, seeing as you're first up on my screen, I'm going to give you a bit of a chance to just introduce yourself quick.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Robin. I've been doing SEO since the 90s. I don't like to shout about myself, and I'm currently SEO Director here at DesignRush, and I oversee all of our strategies. Nice to meet you all.
Thanks, Robin. And Mike, please go ahead and introduce yourself, although I don't think much introduction is necessary.
I'm Mike King, CEO and founder of iPullRank, and apparently the Edward Snowden of SEO right now.
Thank you, Mike. And Daniel, please go ahead.
My name's Daniel Foley Carter. I'm the owner of Assertive and SEO Stack.io and SEO-Audits.io. I've been doing SEO since 1998, 1999, and I love ranting on LinkedIn about all of the things that I find, and I absolutely just love everything that's come to light recently with Google being a dumpster fire. So looking forward to covering that today.
Okay, thanks for that, Daniel. And certainly last but certainly not least, AJ, please can you also introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure, my name's AJ Khon, CEO of Blind 5-Year-Old. I guess been doing this for 20 plus years at this point, so I'm old. And focus on very large B2C SEO for the sites that everybody complains about.
Alrighty. Okay, guys, so we're going to jump right in with the very first question, which for now is just going to be directed to Mike. So, Mike, I'd like you to explain to us in about 5 minutes just what exactly happened? I mean, where did the leak come from? How did you learn about it? Just give us a bit of a rundown of what happened, where we were last week, and where we are at today.
All right, boom. So I broke into the Google offices. No, I'm just kidding. So what happened was, it actually goes a bit further back than what we've discussed thus far, because Dan Petrovich actually finally came out as my anonymous source last night. So he had actually found this leak himself around May 7th, and he turned it into Google, into their bug bounty program. And, he had just been sitting on this data for like 3 weeks. And anyway, what then happened was this guy named Irfan Azimi, he reached out to Rand Fishkin because he had separately become aware of the leak and sent it to Rand. And then Rand reached out to me. He was like, Mike, this is crazy. I'm not technical enough to figure this out. Look at this with me. And I look at it and I'm like, this is amazing. This is a lot of the things that we've always wanted to know. And so I start digging into it and I'm getting excited about it. And I post this like vague tweet and I'm like, yeah, I just found something incredible. We're about to set SEO internet on fire next week. And so Dan Petrovich reaches out to me. He's like, do you have what I think you have? And we're both like talking around it because we don't want to reveal what the other one has. And then eventually we realize we have the same thing. And he already had like a huge lead time on it, where he had already collated the documents in different ways. He had run it through a variety of different, large language models. He built a Streamlit app so he could search things and all that. And then he shared all that with me. And then I went through all that. And then I wrote my blog posts and, gave some of the items that I found to Rand as well. He wrote a blog post because obviously he's going to have a much bigger platform. And so I published, then Rand published, and then, the rest is history.
My word. Okay, and just a quick follow-up on that, Mike. Where are we at today? What has happened that's like the biggest thing for you right now, and where SEOs are at today, and just the general like consensus of Google at this point and their trustworthiness, really?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this has been great for the relationship between the SEO community and the Google spokespeople, but I think where we're at is like SEO still just infighting about it, like, oh, it's not this, we already knew all these things, it doesn't change anything. I mean, okay, like, cool, that's what you think. But yeah, I don't know that we're back to a productive place as a community with this information yet. But I think over time, it's going to yield a better understanding for more people. At least I hope it does.
Robin, do you have anything to mention about what Mike just said, or anything that stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a programmer by profession, so I've got a little bit of a technical background, and I did take a look at the code, and I'm just wondering, how long was it up before it was found? Was it up for a number of months? Has it always been up? Because I see some commits on there that are 7 years old, 6 years old, 3 months old, or was it only exposed in May? Like, that's what I want to know. Like, how long has it been up for? Because have some people had access to this, had insider information, like privileged things? Do you know? Have you got any ideas? Ooh.
So what has been found is that there has been code in PHP, Java, related to this that's been up for 2 years. But as far as this documentation, that's only been up for like the last couple months.
Okay, but it's crazy that it was published so openly. Was that on purpose or was it accidental? Sorry, that's just the follow-up.
Yeah, so it looks like a misconfiguration where, whatever's going on in their deployment pipeline with that accidentally published this version externally. And, based on what I saw from Dan's bug bounty communications, that's basically what they verified. They're like, oh, this is like an internal thing that we messed up that got this out there live.
Okay. AJ, what about you? What are your thoughts on all of this so far?
I probably have different thoughts than many. I would say I know a lot of people have come to me and said, "Aren't you pissed that they've been gaslighting you for the better part of a decade?" Because I've written things which were pretty much what was confirmed more through the DOJ testimony than even in this leak. And I don't feel bad about that. I'm okay with that. I've gotten my apology actually, so that's nice. But I wrote on LinkedIn to Barry Adams, who is very good at ranting, and I love Barry. But I said, we were playing a game of poker with Google, right? Essentially as SEOs. And so, when there are 3 suited cards when you hit the turn, and I stare down Google and say, "Do you have a flush?" I do not expect them to tell me the truth, right? Like they're not going to tell me what's in their hand, because they're trying to win. They're trying to maintain their pot. So I don't really blame Googlers for having to do what they need to do in terms of lies of omission or lies of semantics and whatnot. So that to me, I don't feel bad about. I know a lot of SEOs are upset and whatnot. So that's the one thing. In terms of what's in the leak, lots of interesting stuff, lots of interesting confirmations. I would say maybe there are SEOs who didn't understand some of these things were happening, like NavBoost or Twiddlers or any of the click data and all that sort of stuff. Not something that's been surprising to me as I've been kind of digging in and doing a bunch of that stuff. I think Mike did a fantastic job, in particular for me, in detailing the structure of things and naming the different sort of elements of the infrastructure. So Alexandria, which is definitely a term that I'm familiar with, is one of them. And Mustang, SuperRoot, all those things are all over documents if you know where to look. And Mike did a great job of sort of outlining that and showing sort of exactly what that is. And as I said, if you keep your ear to the ground and you talk to enough people, these things sort of do leak out. I just don't think that a lot of people are paying attention. They pay attention to the SEO for Dummies, which is the EAT documents. Sorry, I'm going to just call a spade a spade. If you want to read that, that's fine. But I think what we're seeing and what I hope Mike is bringing us to is beyond that EAT sort of dummy view and saying like, hey, they use clicks and this is how they use it, and they use vectors and embeddings, and if you don't understand cosine distance between vectors, you better start to figure some stuff out, because that's probably where you're going to gain an advantage in the future.
Okay, thanks for that, AJ. I do have something that I want to go back to about the clicks, but first I'd like to give Daniel a moment to also just give his thoughts on the situation.
Yeah, so it's funny in a way watching so many people catfight over it. I think there's too many varying factors that go together. So for example, you've got the lower level SEO community that have followed bad advice for many years. So, for them, they probably would look at it and not truly understand what they're looking at. But obviously, they want to interact with the community, so they'll have their thoughts. And then you'll have the people that, are SEOs who have been doing it for a long time, who already knew well before this leak came out that what Google says and does are two different things. I can't tell you the amount of times that Matt Cutts would announce that they demoted EMDs and countless other things, and then you would just go and buy an EMD and rank it with spam, and fly in the face of everything that they said. We already knew for a long time about a lot of these things. I think it's made a lot more complex because there's so many different modules that deal with micro snippets of information. And what happens is that you'll have like one factor, and that will have hundreds of correlating micro signals that sit under it. The thing is that as insightful as this leak is, and it is insightful because it confirms the things that otherwise were denied, and I think that's where people have gotten salty about it. And in reality, like, what do you expect? You know, this is the same Google that said that CPCs were set by bidding, and they're not. They can artificially inflate them. So, but looking at it, so when you actually like start looking at a lot of this stuff, you can have all this information, but you still can't take that and go, oh, right, there's a client's website. I'm just going to go and look at 7,000 plus, because I think there was 14,000 modules overall, but that included things like YouTube, Google Ads, and other stuff. I think filtering back, there was like 7,000 or so signals that related to search. But you can't take that and say, right, well, you know, let's apply these things. But we can understand the logic. I think from my perspective, so I've always spent years and years and years testing. So I shout about it on my LinkedIn about the ranks that I get. And all of the rankings that I get are off the back of testing. And for years, it was like you would always look at certain things, especially click behavior. And the one thing that I think is most important, as AJ highlighted, was the fact that the trial of the DOJ, you know, as soon as it transpires that Google cannot take a piece of content, look at it and go, you know, that's good content. Google can't do that. So what do you rely on? You rely on user behavior, and then you rely on signals that go around that user behavior. And although there are elements of content evaluation like spam brain and helpful content and all different things, the fact is that, you know, this is just there for confirmation. How Google uses this, we still will never be able to understand the true mechanics of it. We probably know to a degree that there's so much compartmentalization within Google that these factors can be applied in countless different ways, countless different amalgamations. So, yeah, like, I think this is great from an insight perspective, but it's certainly not going to all of a sudden create a breed of SEOs who know how to rank everything.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you so much for that, Daniel. One question I do want to pose, though, talking about the clicks. From my knowledge, I know that this can be used for quite nefarious things. So for instance, like, it could be used unfairly because people could buy bots to go and click on stuff and increase engagement, like faux engagement, really. Could you guys explain to me a little bit more about that, especially for those people that are tuning in that don't really understand how that works? So Mike, let's start with you on that, and also maybe explain why we shouldn't be afraid of it or why we should be afraid of it.
So there's indications in the documentation that they are looking for behavior that is, you know, not real, basically, right? Click fraud is something that Google has worked on forever because they have to have it in place specifically for ads. Like, if, you know, someone just runs a bunch of bots on your PPC ads and then you're paying them $1 million for fake traffic, like, that's not going to work. So that's not to say that you can't game it. Like, yes, you can. If you distributed, you know, a click bot across a number of locations and so on, like, it would work. Like, that's just the reality. But it would take a big effort. It would be expensive. You might as well just, like, do actual good things rather than doing that. But effectively, what Google is doing is they're using that to, like, reinforce what should rank and verify what should rank, right? Like, effectively, they have a threshold of clicks that they expect for a given position, and those clicks also have to be successful. And so if the user, you know, clicks on your result and then there's no signal to indicate that, like, they stayed on that page and they found what they were looking for, or if they do another search that indicates they didn't find what they were looking for, these are all bad signals for the rankings that were on those pages or shown in that SERP. So Google is effectively just trying to use that as the, you know, again, the verification for what they're ranking in their systems. And yeah, it's gameable.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
AJ,
encourage it, though.
Okay, thank you. AJ, what are your thoughts on that?
I would say it used to be gameable. That's all I won't go further into that, but there was a time when it was. I don't think it is anymore to a large extent. What we're really talking about is nav boost. Nav boost is still, I believe, one of their strongest ranking signals. It does look at clicks. Mike did a good job of talking about it. It is essentially a clicks over expected clicks model. If you're ranking third and Google expects you to get a 12% click-through rate and you're actually getting a 15% click-through rate, you'll probably move up. That's what it does. And so the implications of that, largely, in my opinion, are lately that brand means a heck of a lot. That's how you punch above your own, that expected click rate. And I have clients that we've seen this traditionally where algorithms would knock them down and then you can see the clicks bring them back up because people are like, yeah, you might be at fifth, but I want to click on that result. And then over time you get dragged back up to fourth, to third, etc. So that is the way. If you look back at the foundational patents, you can't look for clicks. The magic words are implicit user feedback. Those are the magic words that will get you to. So I often wonder if we had asked Googlers if they used implicit user feedback in their algorithm, what they would have said. Now, no one did that, but that is where all of it resides. And you can see they divide it into people who are experts on the topic, people who are novices, people who they divide it by geography. There are multiple ways that they do this. I have no doubt that they have multiple ways to slice and dice this to sort of figure out all of the ways that the clicks can do that. That said, I think it's gone awry and they need to figure something out. But that is what clicks are. And as was mentioned by Daniel, the DOJ made it pretty clear, the magic of Google is not that they understand documents, they understand how people interact and react to documents.
All right. Robin, what say you?
I mean, there's plenty of evidence that click manipulation is still happening, and it's happening at a robot level and a human level. So people are buying clicks and then they're paying people to click their results, and they're expecting their results to get better, but I haven't seen that. So I look at the SERPs very, very closely in our particular categories, and I can probably point who the culprits are of this particular these manipulations, and I don't see their rankings changing. So it used to work. Maybe it still works. We do see some kind of halo and sometimes, but it's ineffective. And Google needs to use it as a softer input. I don't think it should be everything, because it tends to you then optimizing, or you're showing the people who are getting the most traffic more often, which tends to then isolate traffic among an elite few, which we are seeing. So the big publishers are getting the most clicks, and is it perpetuating that? And are we putting a middle finger up to the small publishers, which I'm guessing is a thing that people are complaining about at the moment. So maybe, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Daniel, your thoughts?
One of my methodologies has been to test. I live and breathe testing. So I've done click manipulation for a few years now. I tested it consistently. One of the people that inspired me to do that was actually Rand Fishkin years ago. He put on Moz. I think I forgot what the example was, but he basically put a shout out asking loads of people to search for a query, which is Moz articles, like at the bottom of page 1. And then loads and loads of people jumped straight to that, clicked it, and then within a day, his positions had gone up. So that intrigued me. So I spent years doing click manipulation to test it. And it's one of those things where I know it definitely does work, but the application of when it works will fall under various criteria. So for all the years of testing that I did, there was some really foundation things. The ranking factors in Google change depend on where you rank. So for example, Google isn't going to have click data when you're on page 2, 3, 4. Or you might have some long tail data, but typically what tends to happen is the ranking factors will change as your position comes up. At the point where you begin to earn clicks, what will happen is that you'll then have that behavioral model that Google can start looking at and incorporating you in as part of a test. So one of the things, obviously, It's click behavior based on query and based on intent, and whether or not that click behavior expects a user to go back to search. For example, you could type in cheap shoes into Google, and naturally a click behavior going from first to have a look to second to third, that's not indicative of a bad experience. Just sometimes people want to browse around. So Google will have machine learning and aggregated data models to look at what the expected behavior is and what expected click distribution is. So one of the ways that I used to test this, I used to use something called CTR Booster, and I used to use it with residential proxies. So basically the proxy request would go out through residential IP, so it would look like a genuine click to Google. And I tested that, and it worked, and it did work. So anyone that knows me, so I actually set up a website called bulkco.co.uk. And basically what I did was I set this website up, I put loads of products on it, I then used basic SEO to get it to start ranking, and then I used click manipulation to start driving rankings up. And then once I started to get real clicks, because the prices of the products were so cheap, it kept people on the website. So that's one example of click manipulation working. So I have no doubt that that model is still very strong today, considering the whole content evaluation process from Google is still not where it needs to be.
So I want to understand, they were saying that they weren't, and it come out that they have been. So I want to know, what are your thoughts on why they lied about that?
Well, it being such an important signal to again verify that the results are working. They don't want us manipulating, right? Like we found out about links, and then the link graph is just a complete mess because of us, right? Like they don't want us destroying such a valuable signal. I think it's as simple as that. And there were people, like we just said, Rand was showing examples of it. Daniel's been doing it for years. Like plenty of people out there have been using this. These solutions out there like SERP clicks and CTR booster and all that have existed forever. And so there has been, a certain level of SEO that has been using this. And for everyone to know this is a thing, that just means more and more people will abuse it. Like anything that Google has told us is a ranking factor, has been something that we have abused as a community. So, they're just trying to keep it as clean as possible.
I don't mean to jump in, but I just wanted to highlight number one. When I say that I've done these things, these are strictly things that I've done on my own assets. I would never use other people's assets to test these things. And one of the other things that I would say, and I think this is really important, is the fact that what people should really think about is the whole logic of a machine taking a piece of content and being able to make the detriment. Is that content good or bad? Because we could all read the same book here by an author, and you might go, I like that book. And three of us might go, that book was terrible. So how can you have a machine read a piece of content and make a subjective decision that this is a good piece of content? There are things on the algo side that get rid of the basic things. So we clearly know if something's jammed full of keywords, it's likely just rubbish or spam. There are outside indicators that keep the general stuff out of the way. But when you get down to the point where you've got some serious results, good quality results, why would you try and interpret a piece of content and its quality over behavioral indicators? And this should inspire the SEO community to do now is genuinely focus on your UX, focus on creating something. And I think one other thing as well is information gain. Off the back of this leak, we should be looking at information gain and UX at shaping people's behavior to encourage positive clicks. Sorry, I thought I'd drop that in there.
No worries. Thank you so much for that, Daniel. Robin and AJ, Robin, do you have anything to say on that so far?
Yeah, so I've noticed that some of the cyclical impressions that we get have reduced over the past few months. So it's not just click manipulation or people typing in queries to try and get their position to rank higher. It's SEOs doing rank checks as well. So the more competitive the keyword gets, the more people doing searches for that. And those signals also feed in. So they're all passive signals, and I don't like them. And Google, I think, is starting to figure out how to feed those out using their AI and learning. You can see when it's a bot, and I think they're going to get better at it. So they're not there yet, but they will get better at it. And sure, that's not going to help them decide whether a piece of content is good or not. It's like a car. Some people have got different opinions on cars, but we look at sales to determine which car is better or which is the best car. And Google looks at click-throughs in order to determine that. So it's probably the best analogy I can think of.
Okay. Awesome. AJ, anything you want to quickly add to that
I can't talk too in depth about it. What I can say is NavBoost is still one of their strongest ranking signals. We knew that when the 2019 leak came out. You read about it, it's I would say they are further along than most people think in this regard. That's what I can say. I think I'm waiting for them to change the value judgments on the click data. That's what needs to happen for Google to get to somewhere else. And I just don't know when the last time they changed the value judgments on those click signals. If it's been 3 to 4 years, well, the internet's changed. People's behavior has changed. And so if those value judgments haven't changed, that's going to be a problem. So like, here's an example. There are two good examples, I think. My belief is that in 2020, Google got pantsed, right? COVID misinformation and election misinformation proliferated on search results. One of the better ways to ensure that didn't occur would have been to lean into brands a little bit more, right? Target's not going to talk about Bill Gates' conspiracy to have 5G technology in your arm, right? So what would you do? You would basically say, hey, you used to get a boost, that nav boost, if you outperformed your click rate by 20%. But if you wanted to boost brands more, you'd say, now if you outperform your expected click-through rate by even 5%, we're going to give you that boost. Suddenly brands become a lot more important and get a lot more clicks and sort of move up in the rankings. In 2020, another thing happened, this little thing called the pandemic. And all those brands that were spending money on, in-store and other channels, where did they put their money? Online. They hired a lot of SEOs. They did a lot of SEO work. And because I think Google was leaning into brands, they got a lot of success, which meant they poured even more money into it. So I think you're looking at sort of a combined effort of like Google leaning one way with their click behavior, brands doing the same thing, and it being kind of a synergy that led to what I think is a pretty dismal search results right now today that I've been complaining about pretty vocally for the last 18 months.
Okay. Mike has a hard stop in about 13 minutes, everyone. So Mike, if you leave, that's fine too. We can keep discussing, but I would like to just cover some of the bigger topics as well. I want to know, what is the long-term and short-term implications of this on these businesses, smaller businesses? Because I know there's a lot, say for instance with Lily Ray, that had to switch her DMs off because so many individuals and businesses were contacting her to figure out what's been going on before the leak came out. So I'm wondering, what does this Google leak and all of this mean for small businesses or individuals that are suffering the most right now? Mike, could you start, please?
I mean, for the small businesses, it's hard to say, right? Like, I think that one of the things that I called out is the fact that they have a feature related to identifying, is it a small personal site? Now, again, this whole thing is the ingredients, not the recipe. We don't know what they're doing with that, but we do know that Google isn't doing something specific to boost these small sites, right? Because we're seeing so many of them get crushed over the last few months. Like, there's so many stories out there about, these smaller sites that they're having to like close down and so on and so forth. And I think to the point that Robin made earlier, these core signals that they're looking at, clicks, links, even the relevance of content, are all things that align better with bigger brands, right? You're going to get more clicks if you're a brand that I recognize. You're going to get more links if you're a brand that I recognize. You're going to have more relevant content, or you're going to hire someone like the people on the screen to improve your content relevance in a way that's typically quite expensive because you're a big brand. And so really what we're seeing here is that it's not a level playing field in the way that we used to think SEO was. So, to some degree, I think the smaller brands are just like, okay, cool, there's no hope. Let's focus on social, or let's focus on email. Let's focus on these other channels where we have more of an understanding. And so effectively, because of the way that Google is doing things, the search and effectively the web, because the web conforms to what Google wants, is a better reflection of what's happening in the real world, where the winners just keep winning and the losers keep losing.
Okay. Sorry, everyone, I'm going to give you all a chance to respond to that as well. But because I know that Mike needs to leave soon, I just quickly want to ask him what his biggest takeaways are. Mike, what are your biggest takeaways on all of this that has happened?
My biggest takeaway is that the SEO community doesn't know anything. If I'm being honest. But no, I think, it is a lot of things that are reinforcing things that we believe. It also just allows me to have ammunition to get buy-in from clients for a lot of these things. So, I've worked with AJ. I know AJ has said for a long time, like, we need to focus on UX. We need to focus on UX. And it's something that I've said as well after working with AJ, right? Because I've seen the value of it. And it's always been pushed back like, no, UX is just over here doing what they do. But the reality that clicks are so important here, we have to do things that are going to align with driving that behavior. Otherwise, like, you can make the best content in the world, you can build all the links, it's only going to get you so far if people are not seeing it because other people aren't saying that it's valuable. It really makes search a lot like these other channels, right? Because if you don't get the user activity, the user behaviors on Instagram or on TikTok or on all these other channels, you don't get the visibility. And so really, it just goes to show how important those user signals are, and that we have to position ourselves to reinforce those things.
Okay, and then just quickly as well, Mike, what are your predictions of what Google will do now, do you think?
I think Google's gonna, monitor what we're saying and then, look to see what the behaviors are of people that are actively doing SEO, and then counterbalance things like what they always do, right? It is the cat and mouse game. And I think effectively a lot more people are going to go after these CTR services, whether we like it or not. And then Google's going to have to figure out okay, how do we, carve out the clicks that aren't real, right? But I also think that there's other features that people are going to look to game as well. It's going to be more about building links from sites that get a lot of traffic, because we know those are the pages that are going to appear in that part of the index that they are valuing higher. I hope it yields people doing more things that make sense, like building more links from relevant pages rather than playing the volume game that we've all been playing for the last 20 years. So I hope it yields ultimately a better web, but it's not. It's going to be the 4 or 5 things that everyone thinks is doing having the most impact, and then everybody's going to double down on that, and then Google's going to turn down the weight on those signals, and then we're going to be back where we were before.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Mike, thank you so much for that. Daniel, what are your thoughts on everything that Mike just said?
Yeah, I agree. I think, there's so many nuances to it, because we only have to like take basic common sense back to the table, right? So for however long Google relied on traditional basic ranking factors because it didn't have the computational power that it does. Ever since RankBrain, Google obviously has advanced. It has its own proprietary AI. They've been, obviously they've invested a significant amount into it. So I think obviously, like Moore's law with processing power, everything gets more exponentially powerful. But I think the problem is that when you've got, a brand history of 20 plus years, you've got an index, significant amount of context, probably petabytes of data, and you have such a fragile ecosystem because you remember it doesn't take a lot for Google to change one thing for it to have an overarching effect. We already know this with helpful content updates, and I have my own thoughts on that. But
sorry about that. Daniel. Okay.
Then we lost Daniel.
In the meantime, AJ, is there anything that you'd like to respond to Mike?
To Mike, I think Mike had it right. I think my background is in marketing and advertising, which is not a typical way that a lot of SEOs get into this business. Most of them, I think, usually come from a technical background and then come into it. I think what Mike is basically saying is that we need to approach SEO a little bit more like a marketer than a webmaster, right? I've always been like, I get into trouble with a lot of clients because I'm like, yeah, this SEO stuff is nice, but we need to improve the product. We need to improve the UX. I'm the person who will sometimes say, like, you're getting 80% of your traffic from search. That's not good. Go out and do some biz dev deals and then come back to me, right? Like, it's not safe. I think you need to build a business, and I think that's what a lot of what I see in the leaked sort of documents and modules sort of speak to that of like, is this a real site that's doing real business and trying to really establish something? And lately, what I find, and even in my side projects, which I have let sort of die on the vine, zombie sites are getting kind of shuffled off. Like, if you haven't done much with your site for a while, Google's like, no, thank you. And sometimes I agree with it, sometimes I don't. But I think, Mike's been able to raise the level of discourse. I think his dark prediction about the fact that it won't last long and people will glom onto like the 3 or 4 things is likely true, because that's just what a lot of people, not just SEOs, I think this happens in every industry, what have you, the people who don't understand nuance just, want the silver bullets. One of the things I tell clients is, this isn't like, hunting werewolves. There are no silver bullets. And it's the opposite of death by 1,000 cuts. It's success through 1,000 optimizations. You got to do a whole bunch of stuff and you got to keep doing it. And I think, the modules and attributes make that pretty clear when you look at all the stuff that's going on. No, you can't just pick a couple things and go like, I'm just going to get links, or I'm just going to do this. Nah, you got to do everything. People don't like to hear that, but that's the truth. The sad part is most people are allergic to work. And so, if you're not allergic to work, you're going to get ahead. And I think that's what you're seeing in these docs.
Okay. Thank you for that. I see we have Daniel back. Sorry, Daniel, just give me 1 second. I just want to give Robin an opportunity to just ask or respond to Mike before he leaves, which he has only 2 minutes. So.
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay. Robin, go ahead. Do you have anything you want to...
Spot on. Spot on. But I agree with everything you said. And Google's got a tough job. I actually feel sorry for them. It's thankless. And those guys that have to engage with the SEOs have got skin thicker than mine. I wouldn't be able to do it. They keep on trying to hold that message. and I know that you, AJ, you've been gaslit for a long time, and they're like, this is like, it's, I think a good term is a reality disruption field. So it's almost like you're naive to think that this is a real thing. Like you were talking about pogo sticking like 12, 15 years ago. And that's actually where I first thought that's click-through. So you're absolutely right. But I actually feel a bit sorry for Google, and I don't really blame them for doing what they do. As you say, it's like poker. And they just reveal their entire hand. Or we just got a glimpse at their hand. And sometimes it feels like looking into their dirty underwear drawer, or it's a bit sleazy, it's cheating. Because we've been able to do this stuff without seeing the hand before, and we can figure it out through inference. This is almost like cheating, so I feel a little bit guilty, and that's all. But thanks for your work, Mike. It's good analysis, and thank you for bringing this to us.
Of course.
All right, Mike, I know you need to hop off. Everybody else, are you available to talk for another 15 minutes or so, seeing as we joined a bit later?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Cool. All right.
Mike, thank you.
Take care, Mike.
Thanks so much, Mike.
Bye.
Have a good one, and good luck. Bye. Okay, so I just want to ask you guys, what do you think have been like the hottest takes within the last week? Or what would you say is your hottest takes of what's happened in the last week? And basically pose the same question I asked Mike, is what do you think are going to be the long-term and short-term implications of this, and what do you think Google is going to do about all of this? Robin, let's hear from you first.
Cool. I mean, my hottest take is that it's not as complicated as we thought. And I know that's like, there's 14,000 signals. Yes, there's a lot of signals, but I was always anticipating Google was a lot smarter and was doing a lot more deep analysis of exactly what words are on the page and how complex this can get. And looking at what I can see there, it's not as complicated. It's a simple structure, and you're just applying lots of things to it. Maybe sometimes we as SEOs get a little bit too, caught into our own nonsense, and we actually believe that Google is that sophisticated and can waste that many resources on every single page of content. They can't. They've got to take some shortcuts to try and do things as quickly as possible. And they're not looking in great detail at every single page. They use these heuristics to get rid of a lot of pages very quickly and then only focus on a few pages. And we kind of tend to forget that there's a limited number of resources. And now with Gemini, they've got to put some of their resources towards the GPT. They can't just do web crawling all the time. That's my take.
Okay. Daniel, what do you think?
I mean, realistically, I think the timing of all of this obviously hasn't been good for Google, but I think there are far bigger things at play. I think this is more for the SEO community than anything else. But I actually think when you look at it, okay, so you can have a large chunk of people that don't understand it. The ones that do understand it will never understand the application of it. And then what you also have is the fact that you can have 7,000 signals, but how many of those are applied across uniform queries? They're not. You'll have one set of queries that will have completely different signal indicators to other. So for example, pornography, there are indicators and modules that look at the type of content that is there, because obviously you have safe search. It's the same with gambling, YMYL health. There are going to be so many overlaying applications of this. One thing I do find that is very interesting, I believe more and more that Google's core algo has more and more machine learning baked into it. And I think what we need to start thinking about is, as searchers, if Google has far more ability to use machine learning to serve up results, we almost have to go back to the idea of personalization to a degree, because if you remember many moons ago, back in the days where Google used to show supplemental results, you actually used to have more result personalization. And I think if Google could get to a point where behavioral signals better shape or predictive signals better shape the kind of content that you consume, much like TikTok, we get to a search that is far more personalized for people. If we look at the signals as a whole, it's great that we can look at them, but we can't do anything with them. We can confirm that certain things exist, but how we confirm their application, that doesn't exist. So I think we go back to the common sense logic. If we genuinely want something to do well, we take on board that building a brand should be at the forefront, and not just building brand to rank, but building brand so we have traffic diversity. So that's one part of it. And the second part of it is that you would consistently try to continue building authority in your brand. Obviously, we can talk about links there. But then, it's the fact that for years and years and years, the SEO community was so gated and focused on SEO and not the end user. And I think now with machine learning looking at the end user, SEOs are now having to pivot their decision. So if I give you one really good example, I do a lot of auditing for big casinos, big online betting affiliate sites. And one of the things that I've seen consistently since over the last 3 HCU updates, helpful content updates, is all of a sudden, the casino industry is guilty of this, 10, 15,000 word articles, because every casino was trying to outrank one another, producing content that no one read. No one read 15,000 words of content. And you would go in and you would look at average engagement time, 30 seconds, 45 seconds. So what I started to see was finally all of these long form articles were getting wiped out with much shorter form articles that used micro snippets of data, the key bits of information that people wanted. So I genuinely think that now, obviously with the evolution of machine learning and the data that Google has access to, even though it's anonymized, we are heading towards a revolution now where the behavior makes the difference. So traditional rankings will get you so far. And then at the point where you start building that traffic and you get other source traffic, you then need to be demonstrating, hey, look, what's here is actually good for the end user. I think, these leaks are really just great for reference, but nothing more.
Okay, thank you. What about you, AJ? I know you say that you don't really blame Google for the gaslighting for all of these years, but do you have even like a slight hot take on any of this?
I mean, I find some of the stuff in it interesting. It's a nice confirmation. I think my hot take is it blows up a lot of the mythology that SEOs had about how things worked or were told, and trust me, I had numerous SEOs tell me that I was wrong. Google said they didn't use clicks. And I was like, all right, I'm sure they do. Like I've read enough and I've put enough of the connected the dots enough that I was certain that they did. And then the 2019 leak, it was like absolutely positively sure. But that's what you're gonna. I mean, we're in an industry where nothing is explicitly known, so people are going to fight about this. I somewhat gave up on trying to convince people a number of years ago. A, I got busy, I was working a lot, and B, the industry just had embraced EAT to such an extent that if you talked about something outside of that, it was like, but that's not how it works. And it's like, yeah, but it really does work that way. So it's been a strange time in the industry. So I think my hot take would be, I think it might be healthy for the industry to at least get a more explicit look about how Google thinks about this. One of the things that I always try and tell people is I try and put myself in the position of a Google engineer, and how would a Google engineer try and solve this problem, right? And what pieces of data would they need? How would they balance that? How would they understand what was good? How would they, all that sort of stuff. So I remember when all the natural medical sites got demoted, right? And people said, oh, they must have just had a list of sites and then just demoted them. I was like, no, that's like not a Google way to do things. They have done some of that stuff in the past, but it's not what they like to do. And it became pretty clear to me. It was like, oh, you can just have the med to vec corpus, which is basically the best medical texts around in vector format, basically turning words into math. And then you basically say, well, okay, let's look at these sites. How far away in vector space are they from our golden document, this med to vec thing? If you're too far away, meaning you're not related to that, you get demoted. If you're closer, you're all right. Like those are the types of things that I think about when I think about like, okay, all those natural medical sites got crushed. How did that happen? Okay, how would I do that if I were a Google engineer? I think that is a better way for SEOs to think about all of this. And I'm at least hopeful that these docs provide some better way for SEOs to think about how Google might be trying to do this. And then that helps them to understand, what they might be able to do. To Daniel's point, like short form content has been crushing it for the last 2-3 years. It's very clear. I love it. And it's great because, you don't have to spend gads of money getting, someone to write 10,000 words when you can just have somebody write like, this, that, the other thing. But again, most of that has to do with basically saying this is a user-facing discipline. That's what I tell people. SEO is a user-facing discipline because you're trying to figure out what the user is searching for, how they're searching for it, and then you have to say like, does a user want to spend 23 minutes reading this, or do they want to just like get their answer quickly and move on? Yeah, the answer is the latter, right? That's just the way it works. Jacob Nielsen has done the research on, how many words on a page users read again and again, and they skim. On average, it's like 23% of the words on a page is what they read. People aren't reading word for word. It just doesn't happen. I love to write, and so I wish people read every word, but I know that doesn't happen. So I guess that's my hot take is I hope it levels up a little bit of people in the industry and makes them think a little bit more about the technical side or the engineering side of things, because I think that would help a lot of people produce better SEO strategies.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're going to start wrapping up now. Thank you for that, AJ. I'd like to go through each one of you and just get your thoughts on what you think Google will do next in terms of, are they going to come out with a statement? Are we going to hear anything from them? Do you think that they're going to change things, or what your predictions are for that in, say, the next few months now or in the next year? Robin, what are your thoughts?
I think they've done what they're going to do. They're going to keep quiet and just move on like nothing ever happened. I think it's embarrassing. It's probably the worst possible thing that could have happened to Google. So Google's the biggest loser here. We got a little bit of a tidbit here and there, but they're the ones with egg on their face because their competitors out of China, out of Korea, there's big out of Russia now just have a good look at a juicy little platter of things that they can take learnings from. Those are the true winners here, and the search engines. It's just embarrassing for them. I think they want to get over it and move on as quickly as possible and never see it again. And hopefully, nothing like this will happen again.
Mm-hmm. Daniel, do you agree?
Yeah, Google has a history of providing something else for people to get kicked up about. I think to be honest, as big as news this is, it's sort of not at the same time. So for example, helpful content is far more rampant because it affects the SEO industry and it affects the end user. This is just something internal with SEOs. And I think realistically, Google engineers and Google probably know, all right, well, there's some data points here, but are people really going to be able to do anything with it? No. So I think the issues with SGE and helpful content are enough to make this go away fairly quickly.
Yeah, well, I think the issues with SGE is a whole other podcast that we could have actually as well. That's a whole other can of beans, which maybe I'll even try to get you guys back on to talk about that too. What about you, AJ? Anything that you will predict, or do you kind of just agree with
No, I concur. I think Google will not comment further. I think they're just going to let it lay there. Clearly egg on their face in terms of it being out there. That was a gaffe. But, as Daniel pointed out, I don't think there's... I know some of the stuff isn't probably used. Like there's... we don't know what it's weighted. There are other things that are not in this, which are part of the algorithm. That's for darn sure. So I'm not particularly... I don't think Google's particularly concerned about it. They're just sort of like, well, that sucked. And now they know some stuff, but not enough to really do anything. And I think they're just hoping that it quietly goes away while they work on other things. And there are quite a few other things for them to work on. So a distraction maybe, but one that I think they're not going to address or try and remedy.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like from a PR perspective, maybe that's the best response is no response, right? All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. I know that we've all been on here for about an hour now. Let's keep an eye on what's happening and what future developments there are. I'll definitely be keeping an eye on your LinkedIn posts because surely there are going to be a few. But thank you so much for joining us today and giving your insights into this Google leak. It's been pretty eye-opening, to be honest.
Well, thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you so much, everybody. You guys have a good day and good luck to you as well, because I'm sure you guys are also going to have your hands full.
All right.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.
All right, you too.
Thanks so much. Bye.
And that's a wrap on the DesignRush Roundtable on the Google SEO leak. Thanks again to all of our guests for joining us and sharing their valuable insights on this matter. Remember to like and subscribe for future editions of the DesignRush Roundtable. Until then, I'm your host, Bianca Mayer. Stay curious and join us again.